Hello, and welcome to the Rite of String podcast. I'm Kevin Sluter.
And I'm Matt Moreno.
And we are bringing you a show about orchestra teachers,
for orchestra teachers,
and those aspiring to be orchestra teachers.
While we are tasked with performing music at a high level, a truly successful and healthy program needs to feel like a family. There are many ways to create a classroom culture, and today's guest is an expert. Christy LaLonde talks to us about raising an orchestra student for life, and walks us through the challenges of creating a family setting in a brand new program.
Well, I always wanted to do music and I always wanted to do education. And as a junior in high school, I think I realized I could do them both at the same time, and that kind of solidified it for me. I never wanted to do performance. I always wanted to do education.
And you moved around quite a bit, right? Or at least from Chicago to Houston?
Yeah, I grew up in the Chicago area. I started piano when I was 5 and viola when I was 9. And they were my thing all the way through high school. And I thought I was going to become like an English teacher or a math teacher. Mm-hmm. And like I said, when I got into high school and realized that I could be an orchestra director. Well, and moving to Texas made me realize that because of the great programs in Texas. Mm-hmm. In the Chicago area, it was kind of like a one-off. Like, you could be part of a great program, but not necessarily the program next door. Whereas, like, in the Dallas area and the Houston area, everybody has these huge programs. And so I realized that that was a possibility for me. And when I toured UNT and they said, you could have a 100% job placement rate, that was one of my parents' big concerns, that I wouldn't have a job as a music educator. And so when they said that, my parents were like, okay. And
it is not a problem.
It is not a problem.
It's still not a problem.
So was there any difficulty within yourself convincing yourself to stay in Texas for teaching, or were you open to going anywhere in the country?
I actually really wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And when I realized how little music teachers got paid outside of Texas and how insecure their jobs could be, or that they would be working at 5 campuses instead of 1, I realized Texas was the place to be for music education.
So you said you've always known you want to do music and known you want to do, like you said, you started piano at 5. Now, obviously, I'm sure that you were not 2 going, I want to be a music director. Was there anything that happened along that way where or was it you touched that key on the piano and this thing lit up inside you and just never went away?
No, actually, I wanted to quit when I was in 3rd grade and piano. And I wanted to quit and I wanted to go do orchestra the next year when they started it in elementary school. And my mom said, no, keep practicing until the spring recital or whatever. And so I did, and I had a really great recital, and then I decided. And then when I met the orchestra teacher in 4th grade and they told me that piano would make me a better violist, I was like, all right, fine, I'll do both. And so piano was still my main instrument, though, until about junior year of high school. I competed on piano, and in Illinois, there were a lot more competitions on piano than there were for viola. And then when I came down to Texas as a junior, I got to do region and all that, those kind of big competitions. And that kind of got me practicing viola way more and more seriously. And then I decided to take that to college.
Yeah, so I've heard of a lot of programs that start kids in 3rd or 4th grade that will start all of the kids on violin. And then after those first initial years, switch them over to other instruments. Did they start you on viola right away?
Yeah, I actually was sized for cello. I really wanted to play cello. Oh. And my mom said, no, that thing is too big. You will play viola. It's the next best thing. And
that's before you knew about all the jokes, right?
Yes, exactly. And I was excited to play viola, though, too. And so that's what I ended up doing. No, they didn't choose for us, though, is the answer. We got to pick.
Okay. Well, so where do you teach now? And where have you taught before?
So when I started teaching, I taught in Grand Prairie, just south of the Dallas suburb area. Mm-hmm. And then I then taught in Louisville for 6 years. That's where I taught the longest.
6 years.
Yeah. And then I just started a new position in Frisco, Texas. So all in the Dallas area, but just kind of around.
Well, and so just like to kind of put some pieces together for the listener here, I currently teach at Louisville High School, and Huffines Middle School, where you were teaching for 6 years, was a direct feeder into the high school. It is also where I taught right before I went to Louisville High School, and where Ryan Ross,
My husband.
your husband, taught. And then I took his position, you took over Huffines, and like there's been all sorts of shifting around of everything. So
Yes.
we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
Quite a
we
bit.
are.
And where we met Matt.
And we're all, yeah.
You know, I got to see for many years consistently students coming up to Louisville High School with like, I mean, they were just like, the best way I can describe it is they were orchestra kids for life. And it didn't really matter if they were a goofy, weird, artsy kid or they were, you know, a very straight-laced type A personality. Like they just love everything orchestra, and if there's a way for them to stay in it, you know, past their senior year of high school, they're gonna do it. And it wasn't just like, oh man, this is an interesting group of kids that came up. It was every kid came up that way. And so I was just thinking, man, I just realized that you have a way of running a program and working with students that creates these types of kids. It's like a culture building thing that you do. So I mean, like, how do you, and this may be something you do naturally, that it's not something like I've got my bulleted list of how I build an orchestra student, but like, how do you build culture and these orchestra students for life? Or what do you think might be doing that?
So I think it helps that I am an orchestra nerd to start with. That was me growing up. Like, it was my place to be. And so that's something I always want to foster for the students. And I really love my job. So I think that gets conveyed to the kids through what I do. Actually, that's like on my first day speech to the kids is like, I love my job. Mm-hmm. Don't make me change my mind about that. I like to have a lot of fun and kind of, you know, let them be who they are and let them have a voice in the orchestra. Like, I know there's a lot of different philosophies as far as like, you know, it's a democracy in the orchestra, or it's a dictatorship where the orchestra director is in charge. And I always would joke with the kids and tell them that it was a benevolent dictatorship, that you know, they have a say, but in the end, you know, what I say goes. And but always letting them have their voice in what we did, whether that be the choices of music. You know, I always pick more pieces than we're gonna do and let them then choose out of those pieces that are appropriate for them at the time, so that they feel like they've chosen those things. I let them choose what they want to do at socials, and I encourage them to express what they want to happen musically in the music, instead of me just saying like crescendo. You know, it's like, right. Well, what do you think should be happening here? How would you sing it? You know, and letting them take a lot of ownership over what they're doing.
And they're usually right.
They are, yeah, because they're emotional people, and I feel like one of my jobs is to help them get in touch with that. And I think by doing that, it's like an outlet for them at school, and they start to see music the way I see music, and how can you not be attached to it?
Right. I think the first thing you mentioned with just letting them know that you love your job, you love music, you love teaching, really makes a difference for the kids to buy into what you're doing. I mean, they know that you're totally invested in it, and that's something I tell the kids as well. I mean, personally, I feel like I'm just goofing around all day, but we're just having fun and just still being so productive. But I like to let the kids know that often, that I just enjoy doing this every day. I enjoy being in front of them. And you know, I think in the small instances I've seen you with your kids, I mean, that's just real obvious. There's no, it doesn't look like you're doing work, you know?
It doesn't feel like it. Yeah.
Right.
Especially, you know, when you're making good music with them, it doesn't feel like it at all. Like, it feels like you're doing what you love. So, yeah. And there's nothing like that I find more rewarding than getting them to like a musical experience. And I think that like when I can get to that point, and you know, my kids will joke that like I'll dance while they're playing and stuff like that. And I will, because like they inspire me, and then I feel like I can inspire them back to be silly and free in what they're doing. So one of the you know,
few memories I have that I've actually gotten to see you in front of your kids was when I was doing the all region. I was the clinician, and I think it was break time, and I went outside for whatever reason, and I could see off in the distance a director, which was you, and kids taking turns rolling down this hill.
I got yelled at for that.
It was so great. It was just like, that's all. I mean, most of the other directors were just sitting in the lobby, probably on their phones, and here you are taking photos or video of each kid rolling down the hill to the bottom.
I still have those videos. That was Danny Hare. Well, I'm supposed to say.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, like, did you start the tradition of, at Huff Hines, you'd always have to roll out those tarps in the gym for the concerts, and then the kids, there was always the one moment where you had to really make sure that all the air was pushed out of these gigantic tarps or they couldn't even be picked up, and I would just go there and I would be ready to go home, but it would be worth it to stick around and watch all the kids who
line up to roll the
yeah, they do. Yeah. They lay down on it and just roll across it to push the air out, and that was like me, I want to do it.
One of my favorites is when the little siblings get involved and they look forward to the end of the concert so they can join the rolling on the tarp. But yeah, I don't know whose idea that was. It just kind of evolved. So.
Well, I think sometimes the best ideas are the ones you just go, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so this is something I do not know how to do yet, and it's year 12 for me. So that's easy to do with the kid that's like you let them be themselves, and those kids just kind of rise up to the surface, and you see them, and they're in, and you let them be them, and that kind of fosters that growth. But there's always going to be that kid, even at the high school level, because they have to have a fine arts credit in high school, that is, they look at orchestra, they go, well, I'm in that now, I don't really necessarily, this is not really my thing, but I've got to have my credit, and so they'll take that class. Do you, we care about all of our kids, but do you put any concern in your mind towards getting that kid with the group, or do you also with that kid just kind of let them, if orchestra is kind of a passive thing in their life, do you let that just be a passive thing and then go from there, or do you are there any things you do to try and include that kid that maybe doesn't have that tendency towards orchestra already?
I think there's a couple things. First, having socials outside of just music making, that kid can then get involved with the social aspect of orchestra and the team part of it. And once you get them to buy into the team, then their peers can help pull them up and hold them accountable to learning the music. Then they're going to meet a certain standard for you. They're not going to do nothing. I also think that a lot of times those kids aren't finding success anywhere, and if you can help them find success, even if that's oh my gosh, your F sharp was in tune. Yes. Right. And just celebrate those kids more even sometimes than the other kids who are already getting plenty of celebrations. That helps them have a home in orchestra too. A lot of times that kid who doesn't want to be in orchestra, doesn't want to be in math, doesn't want to be in science, and they're failing those classes, and you can help them find success because it's something totally new. They might have failed math all the way through. They've never done orchestra, so they don't know they're, not good at it yet. And then you can help them be successful. And I don't think there's any kid who can't. They can do better or worse, but there's no kid who
better or less better.
Better or less better. Yeah, but there's no, you can always get a kid to a D major scale. You can get them to make a good tone on the string, and then you can celebrate those little things.
So what would you say are some of the biggest differences you saw from your first year at Huff Hines to your sixth year? In terms of culture, what stuck without you even having to do anything?
Well, when I got there, Kevin had been there a year before me, and then there had been another director there the year before that. So I was the third orchestra director in 3 years. So there really wasn't a lot of culture. I think the biggest thing that changed in the 6 years was that my kids that I started in 6th grade would become, great leaders in 8th grade, to the point that I had buddy systems where my 8th graders would tutor my 6th graders, and we had a block lunch time where they could do that. It was just kind of a free practice time, and that not only did it build community across the grade levels, but it made them accountable, and they had this older student telling them how it is at Huff Hines. I didn't, it was it became on autopilot. I didn't even have to work on it anymore. Oh, we don't do that. we do this, we don't do that, you know, and like teaching them the ways of orchestra without me having to like work very hard at that because I had already trained them all. And
yeah. Did you have officers?
I didn't, no.
Yeah.
I had kids who were basically officers because I couldn't get them out of the orchestra room.
Right.
But,
Right.
And they would, you know, they would help clean the room. They would, you know, do whatever I asked. But they were not officially officers because I never wanted to make any kind of hierarchy.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of just like general community.
So how did the buddy system work? And was it only 8th graders being the leaders of that? Did they work with 7th graders and 6th graders?
At first it was only 8th graders, and they would put their name on the wall and like what instrument they were, and then 6th graders could sign up with them for a day of the week. And then like the 6th graders were held accountable. Like if they didn't show, then they weren't allowed to sign up again for like another week or two, and then. You know, and they didn't really have any assignment, or it wasn't like a guided thing. It was more just like, you know, we're working on Mary Had a Little Lamb, so the 8th grader's going to help them play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah. And my favorite thing was when I'm in my office and I hear an 8th grader go, F sharp higher. Like, you know, it's like sometimes I would hear my own voice coming out of the 8th graders to the 6th graders, and that was really funny. But, it was kind of a momentary thing, like in the fall every year, and then I never had 7th graders do it. Well, maybe I had some 7th graders sign up to be leaders, but they were never tutored by 8th graders. Mm-hmm. And then, but it always was only a fall thing, and then it was like they would build that community, and then once the beginners got to a point where they were actually playing real stuff, they would just kind of play together. And something else I did was I always programmed the same pieces for my beginners. For a couple of reasons. One, so that I never had to worry about what pieces I had played with them. Like I always knew what pieces had been played, so like we could do anything we wanted in 7th and 8th grade. But then also like they looked forward to that. Like the younger siblings would come in and be like, "Oh, we're gonna do Dragon Hunter by in the spring," and it's like
this is middle school orchestra. Of course we're gonna do Dragon Hunter.
Of course we are. And like that was kind of community too. They were excited about that, and then all my older kids, no matter what group they were in, could assist beginners in learning that because they had all learned it. So like even my most struggling 7th grader had learned Dragon Hunter and was successful at it and could feel like a pro playing it for the 6th graders and being like, oh, look how good I am at this, you know, and that was kind of cool.
That's really awesome. One thing I know I stole from you was your karate belts. And so do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. I mean, and I can't take credit for that. I mean, I think what all successful directors do is steal things from other people. But I can't say exactly. I think I got it from Ryan, actually, when he was teaching in Rockwall Beginners. He did it, and I don't know where he got it from, but I definitely upped it. Yeah. I took what he was doing, and I kind of made it insane. But the karate belts, it was an optional thing. But it was a way for my competitive kids to really move at their own pace and achieve things beyond like what the group was doing. And it was just a series of finger patterns and scales and, you know, scales with slurs and all the different little beginner skills I wanted them to know in a sequence, you know, finger pattern 1 and then the D major scale, G major scale, D major scale with slurs, and then finger pattern 2 and C major scale. So like it was as we were progressing in the year, they could start passing off those skills. All of those things were things they would be tested over eventually. So if they had already received their karate belt, then they got a free 100 on the test. Nice. And so they always felt like they were getting something for free for that.
And did you do yarn as well? Like white yarn, yellow?
Yeah, so for each level, they would get a little yarn tied to their pegs. And so at the concerts, you know, I could be like, stand up if you have this belt. And so by winter concert, you know, a lot of them have them. And then by the spring concert, I get to celebrate the Ultimate Ninjas was the final level. And we had like a chart on the wall that would track them too, so that the kids across classes could compete. You know, they have a buddy in first period. I would have kids competing like, I have to get it today because so-and-so is going to get it tomorrow. And so it was always a lot of fun, and it really kept them moving forward. And then we'd have a party at the end of the year for anyone who made the level of Ultimate Ninja, where we would get to play electric instruments. And we called it the Secret Ninja Gathering. And I made them ninja masks, and we ran around the school taking secret ninja pictures.
So great. So I have to ask then, because like I said, I stole that and used it at Frankfurt and everything. Did you find that there were kids going into their junior, senior year still with the karate belts attached?
Oh yeah.
Same here.
And I worked with Sarah Bigler. She was an assistant at Huffines 1 year, and then she took it over to her school to lay and took it to a new level too, because she like knitted beanies for the heads.
That's where those came from.
Yes.
I've seen those.
Yeah, like little hats for the scrolls of the instruments, and like that, it was intense. So it was like contagious.
So Evan, you've seen these ninja belts.
Oh yeah, and I think they even like. I'm going to say this because they all should, and especially if any of the students are listening, you should upgrade your instrument when you get into high school if you have the opportunity. But I think they would move their belt things over to their new instrument and put it on the new instrument scroll, even though it was like, $1,000 more than their first instrument was.
And that was something, too, that, like, anyone who had previously made Ultimate Ninja, I would allow to come to the ninja party in the spring. So I would have 7th and 8th graders in there, like, super psyched to be in the ninja gathering. I bought ninja cookie cutters and made ninja-shaped cookies.
Right, yeah.
And I would ice them with little belts and stuff.
And I just I got to see it from this perspective from over the high school. It's like, that idea started, and there have been various iterations of this over the years. Like, when I was at Durham Middle School, my first 4 years, we did, we always called them pass-offs, and there was just a chart on the wall, and it looked, there's a little bar chart, and like, it would go over, and people were like,
karate
neat. And that's all it ended up being, but I would watch, like, some kids would come up with those things, and then all of a sudden the next year, half of the program comes up with them, and then the next year, 3/4 of the program comes up, and it was just because, like, your thing went over here, and then I think that Erin Rich brought it over to Durham, and had the same system going, and all that kind of stuff. This actually makes me think of, I don't know if you were about to go something else. Did you have? Well, I guess I was thinking about. It made me think of this is a similar topic. The orchestra store, the Storchestra.
The Storchestra. Okay, I cannot take credit for that. Okay. Well, I started a Storchestra, but then Erin Rich, one of the assistants at Huffines, she just took it to a new level. We made orchestra money that, like, she made this amazing. I don't even know how she did it, but our faces are on the money, and so I was a $10 bill, she was a $5 bill. Grumpy Cat was on the $1 bill.
Oh yeah.
And
there was a Sluderbuck too.
She did that at Durham.
That's what it was.
But Sluderbuck was next. And then I think you took my place at Durham. Like, you were on the 10.
Oh, that's right. That's what happened. Yeah.
But but we just had a store that they could buy Jolly Ranchers and pencils, and we would give that money out for anything. Over Christmas break, we gave it out if they learned a solo out of, like, a solo packet that we sent home with them over Christmas break. If they came back and could play it for us, we gave them some money. And, like, they loved the money. It was awesome. Yeah. It was hard to keep up with. We had to laminate a whole lot of money to get started. And then it was good. We had a good bank.
So y'all recycled the money and would...
My varsity orchestra... we started running out because my varsity orchestra was saving up, because one of the things on the chart was that I would dye my hair purple if they got like 1,000 of them, and I put it on there thinking they'll never get there. They're going to be too enticed by Jolly Ranchers.
There's a Snickers bar back there.
Exactly.
Or something, yeah.
But one of my bass players became the bank. And anytime anyone would get a buck, they would go back there and hand it to the bass player. And he had a wad of cash. They eventually cashed it in for a donut day instead of purple hair, but that was a whole lot of money. And they were organized about it.
Wow. I thought it was going to be a different bass player.
I'm totally going to steal this and take it to Jasper.
It's fun.
I'm sure. Great. I keep thinking of all this stuff. I was like, I bet my high schoolers would still love this.
They would. They love it.
Storchestra.
Also, another one that I know that happened a lot that we haven't touched on yet is, because I still hear the kids talking about it, and this is another thing that we were talking before we pressed record earlier, that, everybody steals everything. For the record, I hope people steal from this podcast all the time. This is for stealing. They should just named it Steal This Podcast. Like, you would have something, and I might be messing up the names of it. There was like Bow Brothers and String Sisters, and you would have parties for different groups in the orchestra where it was like specific. I was like, these are the Bow Brothers, and you would probably be able to explain it better than me.
Totally stole the names from Bethany Hardwick at Downing. But it's bow brothers and string sisters, and it's kind of a great way to divide your orchestra. Like for me, like we had a big orchestra, and so socials with everybody it's overwhelming. And sometimes you can do it, but when you want a low-key social, you need to divide them somehow. And we'd have a girls' social and a boys' social, bow brothers, string sisters, and it was no big thing. I actually think Bethany does a lot more with it. She does a lot of outings with just the girls and just the guys. But for us, it would just be a semester party, one in the fall and one in the spring. And it changed year to year. But generally what the boys did was we would do a video game night where they would come in, they could bring their systems. I would bring like white butcher paper, and so we'd have like 4 systems going in the room at a time. I once had a kid bring in like a really old TV, like a whole TV, and an ancient Nintendo system because he was like into retro games, and he had his parents like roll in this giant TV. And it was kind of great. But the boys would do that, and then they would play some sports, and we would take a picture of them all holding their bows in the air. And
that room smelled.
It smelled bad.
I went to one of those. No, hold on. No, didn't
we
you
would
do
eat pizza too, and that didn't help with the smell.
Is that when I walked in and y'all had that game? I'm thinking of some of my seniors right now playing this, so this was a while back.
Yeah.
But like, were you
the ball of candy?
It was a ball of candy, and you would just wrap. Was it Saran
Yes.
wrap over and over, and then it's just this. It was almost like the size of almost like a. Is it bigger than a softball, wasn't it? By the time it got bigger?
It was like almost basketball size. So I took a wad of candy and I wrapped it in like saran wrap, and then I put more candy on it, and I wrapped it in
each layer.
A couple layers of tape just to make things difficult, and then like more. It was like this huge ball of candy and saran wrap, and the ball would get passed around, and this was at a Bow Brothers party. Yeah, it would get passed around like a circle, and one person had to roll dice, and if the dice landed on like a certain number, it was random, like a 3, then they got to like tear at the ball and try and get candy out, and then like the next person would be rolling the die, and like when it landed on a 3 again, I can't actually even remember what the logistics were, but it got passed, and then like when the die would hit a number, then they got to tear at the ball.
And so was it a time thing, like when the kid got access to the ball, like they're given 30 seconds?
Yeah. Well, no, they could only tear at it until the die hit like a certain number, and then it had to keep moving. And then when the die hit another number, it would stop, and they could tear at it. Yeah. And then it was kind of intense, but yeah.
I can't think of anything more fitting for like a game for middle school boys than tear at a ball of candy.
Yeah.
So what would be different at the String Sisters besides the fact that their room would not smell quite as bad?
The girls are way crazier than the boys.
Yeah.
They're insane, actually. If you know who Miranda Sings is, she's like a YouTube star who wears way too much lipstick. Anyway, one time at the girls' party, some of my girls went to the restroom and came back like with lipstick like on half of their face, and they were pretending to be Miranda Sings, but it wasn't just like one of them, it was like, I don't know, 10 of them, and they were all being insane with makeup all over themselves. But the girls' party, sometimes it was makeup. One year it was like a hair salon, and I got my hair braided into an Elsa braid. And nail polish. One time when Vivian was in the orchestra, she set up Vivian's nail salon with a sign and everything, and she did manicures.
Of course she did.
And but we always did a movie, and it would be like a sing-along movie. The year we did Frozen, they were singing their hearts out to Let It Go, and I have video of just like this dark room of girls, and they would wear like onesies and bring pillows and blankets to go all over the orchestra room, but it's like this room full of onesies and girls singing Let It Go, and their hair is like in pigtails, and they had a good time. So
yeah, when I think of culture building, like, and when I was thinking about, like, this would be a good thing to talk with you about, like, those events are the things that I picture as being, like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, obviously, that goes into making them, like, an orc dork or whatever, like, but, like, those events seem to just create that possibly more than anything that I ever observed, at least in my mind.
And I feel like there was something about those events that was so crazy. Like, they were allowed to just have a good time and go kind of nuts and socialize and be loud. And then, like, it allowed them to then come and focus in rehearsal, because they knew there was, like, another place and time in orchestra for that stuff to happen. And then, like, we would get together and we could get work done because they also knew they could do that together in other spaces. I don't know if that makes sense, but like we were able to do both.
So what did your kids look forward to the most? I mean, like, all these events sound amazing. What was like the one that absolutely had to happen? They're already talking about the beginning of the year.
Okay, so every year we had a spring picnic, and it was like not a huge thing. It was just, kind of celebrate the end of the year after the spring concert. Mm-hmm. We would eat hot dogs. I had this one mom who was awesome, and she would just like grill hundreds of hot dogs for us and then bring them like in a catering dish. And so we would eat hot dogs. All the kids would bring chips and sides and stuff themselves. And for the first couple of years, it was at Huffines, and then we kind of outgrew the areas we could do it in. And so then we went to a park just across the street, and we were under a pavilion, and that was a lot of fun. Nice. But one thing we did every year was I would line the sixth graders up for a picture, air quotes, and I would line them up in a nice long row and tell them to smile, and then we would throw water balloons at them. And the 8th graders and the 7th graders all knew this was going to happen. And we had to keep it hush-hush every year because they'd be like, hey, are we going to do this? And I'd be like, shh, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I'd be like, we're going to line up for our 6th grade picture. 6th graders line up. And then I'd like start rolling out these like coolers. And all my 7th and 8th graders would start, gathering up. And
I didn't know you did this. Is so funny.
It became a tradition, and we got to pelt the 6th graders with water balloons every year. But I got, it only took about 10 seconds before they all turned on me instead of the 6th graders, but it was fun. So.
Do you have a thing like that, Matt? Or not a thing like the water balloon, but like a thing that the kids always like look forward to every year? It's like,
I'd say, yeah. I mean, well, with us being a 2-year campus, it's new every year to half of the program, but, or some of our big socials are orchestra game night, and we probably have maybe 8 to 10 different TVs running. There's a Smash Brothers tournament. Oh, yeah. There's about maybe 90 kids that get in on that for the tournament, and the humongous bracket, and our officers are, running the entire thing. And then there's an ERS tournament happening at a table, and, there's DDR and just all sorts of games happening. So there's quite a few kids that look forward to that the most. And then our other big event that the kids get more excited about would be the Orchestra Olympics. And that's all outdoors. It's just a bunch of water games. We have water dodgeball, just kind of wetting a sponge, putting it over your head and under, between your legs, like passing it down the line, trying to fill up a bucket behind you. Just, like, we always come up with just different games overall. Our officers just...
That's a good idea.
They just kind of piece it all together, and they create a big rotation system, and it's usually in the first week of school, like that first Friday. So it really kind of brings everyone together and gets everybody laughing, and just meeting new people right away in the program.
That's awesome. I gotta do that next year.
Yeah, that's good. In Texas, that goes over well, especially in the fall. It's so hot.
Well, it's like, for me, the question I get, like, within the first day or two of school is, when's the lock-in? And this is the event that anytime I, like, post on Facebook or something, well, tonight's the orchestra lock-in, I get about 5 or 6 other orchestra directors that chime in and say, why? You are crazy. So, like, we do a real lock-in, and I'm still surprised and feel very fortunate that the administrators allow us to do this in this day and age. But, like, we show up at 9:30 p.m. and we release them at 6:30 in the morning. We set up screens. We have a movie room. We have open practice gyms where we get all the stuff out. We do a donut run when the donut shop's open at like 4:30 or 5. And I mean, it just wrecks your weekend because we do it on like a Friday night, and the weekend's just kind of shot because it's almost like jet lag or something after it. And then the other one we do that I think is a really great thing, one of my favorite events, we have a winter potluck. And we tell them the rule is you either bring a decent amount of some family recipe that you have from at home, or if you buy something, you can't just bring a bag of chips. You need to go to the gourmet section, something that somebody has made. And then we just set out this big, long table, and everybody gets to try everybody's, we tell them they have to bring a list with what ingredients are in there so we don't run into any problems there. But that's one that the students always really look forward to.
Yeah, that's something I want to roll out at my new campus, is some kind of Thanksgiving or winter potluck thing, because I think we could do that and it'd be a lot of fun.
I could see that being successful, yeah.
Yeah. So being at this new campus, brand new school, and tell us again, you have kids coming from how many different locations?
Let me think. About at least 4 different locations, if not 5. There's there are seriously single students coming from this campus over here and 2 from that campus over there. I have about 100 students came from one campus. And then a smattering from all these other campuses. So,
well, just in case we didn't cover, I don't remember what was said, half hour ago or so, but so this is a brand new built school.
Yes.
It did not exist until this year, and this is a program that didn't exist. And to get this program, you're pulling from these 5 different schools.
Yeah. So in Frisco, they rezoned in order to, keep all the schools at a smaller student-teacher ratio. So they, opened a new campus and then rezoned kids from, in the area around the school. The goal is to, keep everyone at a neighborhood school instead of being bused far away. So actually the majority of my students ride their bikes or walk to school. And so it's a brand new campus, but I am not starting with only 6th graders. I'm starting with a full program. We have over 200 kids in the orchestra. And like I said, about 100 of them are from one campus. And then another 20 to 30 are from the other campuses. And then I have beginners who are, fresh to me. But even they have come from a series of campuses. So they don't all know each other either. It's not like they're coming up from one elementary school.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so what's that been like? What's been successful? What's surprised you doing this? Because that's obviously a big challenge that's happening a lot around Texas right now. We got, whether it's a new building or just we are now creating orchestra along with band and choir. What's it been like?
It has been, it's awesome. My kids are awesome, and it's really cool to step into a brand new program where I already have students who are just ready to roll, and I get to play great music our first year. Our fall concert's going to be phenomenal, and those kids were already trained when they came to me. So that's really cool. On the flip side, because there are kids coming from lots of different directors, and even the students, the 100 who came from one campus, they had 2 different directors. One is a 6th grade class and one is a 7th grade class. And so my 7th and 8th graders have different beginner teachers who all came from that school. And so just being able to address who we are as an orchestra has been difficult. Every day in orchestra, my students are wearing orchestra shirts from their last program, and so it's cool. They love their other programs, and I don't want them not to. I don't want to take that away from them.
Sure.
But we need to be able to build what is Lawler Orchestra, and it doesn't exist yet, and I think my students are really motivated by success. They had successful programs that they were at, and until we have a competition or a concert, they're not going to feel that. Right now it's just a class at school, and their family and the culture is from their previous school, and we don't have that yet. And so building that has been hard. We need to have a concert, and our first one is October 24th, and I'm looking forward to it. I just feel like that'll be unifying for us. I've had a boys social already that was just pretty low key. We did intense musical chairs and had some prizes and stuff. But
was it 6th through 8th grade?
Yeah, okay. Probably had about
60, 70 boys show
That's
up.
great.
Yeah. And I mean, it was fun. I invited them to bring their video games, and they got to just kind of hang out. And the goal was for them to get to know each other across the orchestra.
Yeah.
But we don't have a booster club yet, so our socials are also kind of limited right now.
So, you're trying to build this community and you want to do cool socials and stuff, but we're also a brand new campus. So we're trying to like get all that running and then have the like ability to do big group events and stuff. We're just not quite there yet. So.
And did you have a boosters back at Huff Hines?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, we had some really great supportive parents at Huff Hines and made a lot of stuff possible.
So all the events and things that you're wanting to do, it's obviously going to take some time to implement that.
And it takes time, and it's like, I recognize that, but it's hard for the kids because they're in it now and they need that identity now and they need that success now to feel like a community and to feel bought into their new campus. Right now it's just a school, and trying to build that community with students who have come from all over the place and already felt that community where they were at. Like it's a struggle right now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so that's the student end of things there. Is there anything like, I can imagine coming into a new program, like, I'm assuming they went to you and said, well, because I know from talking with you last year, you were having to prep for things like, I don't know, how far back was it like?
Yeah, when did I get the job? I got the job in like March or April, right? I can't,
you were having to like probably go to meetings because it was a new campus. I'm assuming you were given a budget and said, to get things started either from the fine arts office or from the school itself.
Well, Frisco is pretty awesome because they opened so many new schools that they already have like a startup list. So basically they had a startup budget and list, and they had me look at it and say thumbs up, thumbs down, and it was great. So they definitely made it easy in that way. Some of the stuff that was harder was, being able to get into the room to start getting things rolling, to get the inventory going, and auditioning kids to be in the right groups when they were spread out all over the place. And, I didn't necessarily have all the contact info for them. There were new kids registering every day. When I got hired, there were about 170 kids signed up for orchestra, and now we're at over 200. So,
and you're by yourself.
And I'm by myself. And so I ended up doing auditions on Google Classroom, but that was hard enough in itself, just getting that info to the kids to know that they needed to upload an audition. And then, so many kids have their own thing, and trying to make it fair where, I'm going to be out of the country from this date. Can I turn it in on this day? And you really want to make sure, that student's not getting an extra 3 weeks of practice time on their music or whatever. And so it took just a lot of time while I'm trying to finish a year up at one campus. I was already starting the year up at my new campus. So
yeah, I can only imagine.
I'm glad it won't be this next year. I'm really looking forward to knowing my kids and auditioning them at the end of a school year instead of trying to get them placed throughout the summer and all that.
The kids you don't know are just beginners.
Right,
exactly.
And
I'm sure the beginners have probably been one of the easier parts of the job this year so far, is that they are all just kind of blank slate currently.
Yeah. Well, and there are just some other awesome directors in Frisco who had already sized them all, had already given me the paperwork for those kids. Whatever middle school they had originally been zoned for, those directors had already signed them up for orchestra basically, and then gave me the paperwork. There were a handful that missed those sizing nights or whatever that I had to sift through and find, but overall, the beginners were like the easiest part of it. I just needed to tell them to go rent their instrument and they were ready for school.
So on your path to developing the culture you want that program to be, we've been in 9 weeks of school already?
Almost 8. I think we just finished 8. Yeah.
Have there been any memorable breakthroughs already? Maybe with a class or just a group of kids after school that...
I was really nervous when I started because my students were very quiet and reserved on the first week of school, and that's great. They're awesome kids. But after being in a place for 6 years where you just know your kids really well and you have this really strong relationship, I was nervous that, oh, they're never gonna like talk to me. I'm never gonna build that with them. But like already I have a handful of kids who are like my daily orchestra crew who are coming in and stacking chairs and picking up all the stray pencils on the floor. And
Awesome.
just some really wonderful students, and they've come to me and, you know, orchestra's my favorite class, and, you know, it only takes a couple of those to make you just feel like, okay, like I'm connecting with them and we're building something. So yeah.
How's it going for band and choir? Are they having the same challenges?
Yeah, I think so. Like the choir program is smaller than he wants it to be. And so I know he's working on like building a culture too, so that, you know, it's a place that he can do some recruiting, get some more students in his program. And then our band directors are facing the same problems that I am as far as having kids coming from a lot of different backgrounds, and what do you address first? You know, like, you know, this teacher focused on left-hand technique, this teacher focused on right-hand technique. All these kids are capable of playing a grade 3 piece, but this half of them needs to work on vibrato and this half needs to work on bows, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just like addressing the needs of the students. Like when they're all your own students, like you've trained them up, they only have the weaknesses that you have created within them, you know? Like, you know, oh, I see that I need to work on this in their bows because I've, you know, that's something I need to, versus like having different teachers, students come to you and needing to like figure out how to address them all in the same class and, you know, and still make it fun and engaging for all of them. So
That's great. Well, is there anything that we didn't ask about that you feel you wanted to mention? I got just a ton of information from you, and I think I'm gonna steal like 3 things already. I'm like, okay.
You were in my feeder system for 6 years, and then I felt like there were at least 2 or 3 of those things. I was like, you were doing that? That's awesome. No wonder these kids. Well, okay, so something that stuck in my head from earlier, and is, you mentioned that one of the kids said, that F is sharp, or that's an F sharp or something, and you said you were thinking it in your head, and it's almost like the kid said it. One of the funny things that I always feel like I find with the kids that have gone through your program is that they sound like little Christy LaLondes. Like, you know, like, okay, so whenever you come into the room, you might go, hello, and you have this certain way of saying that, and like, I swear that your kids do that, or your former students come in and go, hello, and then they like say it the exact same way. They really are little versions of you after they've come through your program.
somebody once called it like a cult of personality. Like
I can see
kids
that.
stay in a program sometimes for, you know, whatever director they have that they just love. And like sometimes I felt that way with them, that like we had bonded, and like to them, like I was orchestra and orchestra was me. Like it was like inseparable. Like, and so it makes me laugh that you say that, because like to me, like that to them like must be orchestra, like saying hello when you walk in the orchestra in that
That's
way.
what you do when you orchestra.
That's what you do in orchestra. Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things that I like doing here is we sent a Google form. I think you probably sent them to your Lawler kids, and I had some of the Louisville High School kids that had worked with you submit this Google form, and it was ask an orchestra director and ask them to submit questions. And, you know, I knew that some of the kids would, like one of them sent me the question of like, how many pairs of Converse do you have? And the answer is a lot. And, you know, so I knew that some of the questions would be like that, but I handpicked a few of them that we got directed at you. Why did you want to teach middle school orchestra as opposed to high school orchestra? Which is always an interesting question.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, because people have asked me, like, when are you leaving middle school? Never. Because I love middle school. Why do I like doing middle school? Okay, so I student taught in primarily high school, and I felt like, I don't know, there was something about teaching high schoolers that, like, I know that they thought that what I was saying was funny sometimes, but they would never let me know that. Like, they just stare at you like you're crazy. Yeah. And I love the feedback and, like, wild energy of middle schoolers, and I feel like I'm good at, like, corralling that and, like, turning it into good energy. But I hate no energy. Like, I hate walking in a room and, like, talking to the kids and, like, making a funny pun, and they just are like, ugh. You know, like, I I want them to be like, oh my God, she just said that. That was so funny. And just so that like I can work with that, you know, I know how they feel. And if they don't laugh, then all right, I won't make that joke again, you know, but like they're so open. And I also love forming them from the beginning. Like I love beginners, and I love being critical of my own teaching and being reflective on it. And like when I see an issue, I know it's 100% mine. Like I've trained them from the beginning, and then like I would ask Devin all the time. I'd be like, so what do you see in my high schoolers? What did I do to them that I need to fix? Like, you know, and she once told me like, oh, well, a lot of your kids have kind of high bow holds. Like they're too suspended. And so like that became a focus for me, that I would like work on lowering their bow holds, making them more, just their knuckles softer and stuff. And like, so I love that about middle schools, that like I can 100% judge my group of kids is like, okay, I did this really well and I didn't do this well. Right, so now I'm going to focus. Product. It's my product, yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, I miss that about middle school. Yeah. It's the high energy and yeah, just getting them to respond to your humor right away. Because everything you were explaining about the high schoolers, you know, just kind of keeping a straight face and showing no reaction.
And it's not that they don't like you. They just won't let you know they like you. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, so this came from a Lawler kid. This is a two-part, you could answer one or the other. What is the worst temper tantrum you have seen during orchestra? Or what's the worst instrument accident that you've witnessed? Oh. And if there's both, I would be thrilled to hear both, but...
Okay. Temper tantrum.
No names.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think if I've even seen a temper... Okay. I mean... I think the worst I've ever seen wasn't even that bad, but just like a kid like staring me in the face and doing the opposite fingering than I just asked them to do. I mean, that's not like a temper tantrum, but man, that's a lot of attitude, right? Yeah. Like I said, use a fourth finger, and he like looked me in the eyes and didn't use a fourth finger. Like, you make me, you know, like just a challenge.
That's orchestra defiance right there. They're not going to yell. They're going to look at you and play the wrong fingering.
Yeah, and so we talked to mom. But that was the worst, probably. I mean, because it was just so blatant. And, like, I've never had a kid be that rude to me before. And then the worst instrument injury was the bass decapitation. That happened. Well, actually, 2 bass decapitations happened during my time at Huff Hines. One when we had the old bass racks, and the student thought that they had leaned the bass all the way into the rack, turned around, and the bass actually hit the kid, and he was upset about it. But like, I felt bad for him. It hit him in the head, but it was a total accident, but it came down and man, it was just destroyed the neck. Oh, and gosh. Then another one was kind of my fault, but we had an old bass case, and I was passing the bass out of the bus to the bassist who was down below, and the strap on the case broke, and it went neck first into the pavement. Ooh. And just snapped right off. Yeah. It was sad. It was a clean break though. That was an easy fix. It was just like straight at the, what do you call it? The bottom of the neck.
At the block.
Yes, thank you. At the block. Yeah.
I don't know if this is the worst one I've seen, because I've definitely seen a few, but in our orchestra room, like you walk in and there's a bass storage room to the side, and they've got the winger bass lockers, and unlike the cello lockers, a lot of them have a latch that pushes in and then you can hook the lock. And the bass ones, they just close and the hook from the lock latches it in place. And so we always have to train them. It's like, I don't care if you forget to lock your locker, that's fine, but you never walk away from your locker unless you've hooked that lock. And it's because, we always say that for a reason. It's because it's like one point you just hear, a kid walks out of the bass room and you hear, I mean, like those basses sound like a gunshot when they hit the floor sometimes. Yeah. It's like you hear this, pow! And then...
Because the strings like pop.
Oh yeah, oh it's bad. And this suddenly, you hear the pow, and then a split second later you see this scroll rolling out of the room. No. So at least it had that humorous story that can go along with the decapitation, but it just kind of rolled right out of the room. It was not as funny at the time, but it's funny now.
That last bass that got decapitated, it was just last year in the winter. tour, and it was Monica. That was the name of the bass, and
Oh,
there was like a whole ceremony for Monica's death.
Oh, okay. I know whose bass this was then. Wow, that's great. I think that last one would be a good one to end on.
Sure.
What are some of the best orchestra jokes you've heard? I think I've seen you tell some of these before, but is there one that you think is like the best or two of the best?
That's really tough. I mean, I just think a classic, and as a violist, I can say this one is just, what's the difference between a violin and a viola? The viola burns longer. I know that's one that everybody uses, but every year when I tell my kids that joke and they've never heard it before, they're just horrified. So it's one of my favorites.
Nice.
But
Well, I love the idea. It's like you get all these viola jokes, and then they say, and then what you do is you say, "Do you know why viola jokes are so short?" So the violinist can understand them. And that's always that's a nice little comeback you can always do.
It's good. I love all the insulting orchestra jokes. I encourage them in my orchestra classroom as long as they're done in good fun.
Yeah.
One year I got them started after school, like my group of kids that would hang out, and I just like told one, and they were like, "What? Like that was insulting." And then I like opened up a website and I just started reading them, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, Miss LaLonde, that's so mean." And then like before I knew it, they had pulled up their own, and they were going through them and insulting each other back and forth. It was just really funny.
Well, I guess is there anything that you think because we don't know who all might be listening to this. It could be people who are looking at going into the profession. I mean, I have seniors in high school, even juniors that are talking about doing music ed, and people who are starting their first year. It's like, is there anything that you feel like you've learned from teaching orchestra for quite a few years now, and being in, it sounds like the situation at Lawler is a very different one from Huffines and a very different one from Grand Prairie. That's like one of your big truths that you think is important for everybody to know, especially if they're on the newer end of teaching.
I once had a college professor say that you have to find your why, because so many teachers leave the profession like in their first 3 years because it's hard. Mm-hmm. And I think my why changes all the time, but like overall it's because I love what I do. And like I think when you can like keep going back to that and like finding why you love what you do, because like it gets hard sometimes, and like you can forget why you love it and you don't love it one day, but overall you love it. And like when you can remember all the reasons you love it, like I have a little file that is like all the sweet things kids have ever written me or given me, and it's just like my happy face file in my file drawer. And like you hit a bad day and sometimes you just open that up and you read it and you're like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it'll get better again. And like I think persevere, know that it's not always going to be great. I mean, we talk like we love it, and so don't think that you're going to love it every day, because you won't love it every day. Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Christy LaLonde. The featured educational work at the end of today's episode is Fantasia on the Water is Wide by Mark Bernard. Listed as a grade 2, you can find it at luxmusic.com. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, shoot us an email at rightofstring@gmail.com.
Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and join us for our next episode.
See you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.